They slapped me. In front of everyone. At my brother's birthday party. But as I said no. Because I wouldn't hand over the condo I worked 10 years to afford. But what they didn't know was that I had already taken something from them. Something worth far more than $500,000. And it changed everything. You ever sit in silence and ask yourself, how did I end up here? How did it all go so wrong? Because I used to think family meant love, protection, support. But now I know the truth. Family can also mean pressure, guilt, manipulation. My name is Evelyn. I'm 32. No husband. No kids. Just dreams. And the one dream I fought for was my condo. A $500,000 high-rise in downtown Atlanta. I earned every brick. Worked day and night. Skipped vacations. Missed birthdays. I sacrificed everything to make it mine. And when I finally got the keys, I cried. Not because I had made it, but because I had done it alone. No help from Mom. None from Dad. And absolutely nothing from my brother Marcus. So when they came for it, you can imagine how fast my heart broke. It started with a phone call. 2 weeks before Marcus's birthday. Mom called like everything was normal. Asked if I was coming to the party. I said yes, of course. He's my brother. Then she paused. That kind of pause where you know something's coming. Your father and I were wondering if you'd consider signing over your condo to us. Just like that. As if she were asking for sugar or eggs. You don't need that big place all to yourself, she said. You're not married. No kids. Marcus is struggling. You'd be helping your family. I stood there, coffee going cold in my hand. My mouth dry. My head spinning. I said I'd think about it. But in my heart I already knew the answer. Let me ask you something. If your family asked you to give up your home, would you? Be honest. Comment below. I really want to hear your thoughts. The night of the party came faster than I expected. I showed up with a gift and a fake smile. Tried to keep the peace. But the moment I hugged my mother I felt it. That cold tension in her shoulders. The way my dad barely looked at me. And Marcus. He looked at me like I was a stranger. You always were selfish, Ev, he muttered. I should have known you'd say no. I didn't respond. As if I did, I might have exploded. Later Mom grabbed the mic to thank the guests. And then she said something that nearly made me choke. He said, she's going to sign over her condo to Marcus. Because that's what family does. The room clapped, smiled, raised their glasses. And I just stood there, frozen. She never asked me. She told me. In front of everyone. I pulled her aside and whispered, I never said that. She leaned in close and said, you will. Don't embarrass us. Right then I realized. This wasn't just a party. This was a trap. I tried to leave. Quietly. Without drama. But my father caught me in the hallway. You owe us, he said. We raised you. Gave you everything. That condo. It's nothing compared to what we gave you. I looked him dead in the eye and said, you gave me guilt. Control. Emotional bruises I still carry. I owe you nothing. That's when it happened. He slapped me. Hard. The room went silent. And then, my mother slapped me too. People gasped. Whispers. But no one stepped in. I stood tall. Eyes watering. Heartbreaking. And I said no. And I meant it. I walked out. Out of the house. Out of that family moment. But as I sat in my car, hands trembling on the steering wheel, a decision formed in my mind. They thought they could take something from me. They had no idea what I had already taken from them. Something far more valuable. Something they never thought I'd touch. Let me ask you again. What would you have done? Would you have given up your home to keep the peace? Or would you have walked away like I did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading them all. Because in part you'll see exactly what I took from them. And how it shattered our family. More than any condo ever could. When I walked out of that house I didn't just leave a birthday party. I left the little girl who used to beg for my parents' approval. I left the woman who stayed quiet to keep the peace. And for the first time in 32 years, I walked away from guilt and straight into power. Because what they didn't know was that I had already taken something from them. And it started 3 months before Marcus's party. You see, it all began when I got curious. There was something about how my parents acted around Marcus. The way they bailed him out, covered up his messes, defended him like he was royalty. And I always wondered, why? Why did they bend over backward for him but treat me like an obligation? So one evening I decided to do something I never imagined. I opened the old lockbox in their attic while visiting for Thanksgiving. The same one they told me was full of boring tax papers. What I found inside wasn't boring. It was life-altering. Bank statements, checks, letters with my name on them, scholarship award letters, education grant approvals. I flipped through document after document, my hands shaking, only to realize something terrifying. They had stolen money that was meant for me. Tens of thousands of dollars. Maybe even more. Grants and scholarships from programs I never even knew I was accepted into. Money that should have gone toward my college tuition. Instead, my parents told me we couldn't afford it. Said I'd have to take out loans. Said there was no other way. But they lied. They cashed those checks. They used my name. And they used that money for Marcus. I sat in that attic, chest tight, ears ringing. Pages of stolen opportunity in my hands. And suddenly my whole childhood made sense. Why they always made me feel like I was too expensive. Why Marcus got a car at 17 and I got lectures about being grateful. Why I worked 3 jobs through college while he coasted through life. It wasn't just favoritism. It was theft. So I took pictures of every document, every signature, every forged line. Because deep down I knew, one day I might need them. And that day came at his birthday party. When they slapped me, humiliated me, and tried to take the last thing I owned. So what did I do next? I made an appointment with a lawyer. I showed him everything. And his eyes got wide. You know, he said slowly, this could be considered fraud. Mail fraud. Identity theft. Misappropriation of funds. I nodded. I don't want to press charges, I told him. Not yet. But I want them to know I know. He helped me write the letter. Draft the evidence packet. And a week after the party I mailed it. No return address. Just a plain envelope on their doorstep. 3 days later my mother called me. Her voice shaking. Evelyn, we need to talk. Please. I didn't answer. I let her sweat. Then Marcus called. You're really going to destroy your own parents over old paperwork? He spat. And that's when I realized. They weren't sorry. They were afraid. Not of what they did. But of what I might do next. Let me ask you something. If you found out your parents stole your future, would you expose them? Or would you keep it buried to protect the family? Tell me in the comments, I want to know what you would do. That night I sat in my condo. Alone. No family calling to check on me. No apologies. No truth. Just silence. And in that silence, I found peace. Because I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to ruin them. I just needed them to finally feel what I felt all those years. Unseen. Unheard. Used. And now they knew what it was like to be afraid of what comes next. But here's the thing. Thought it was over. I thought they would back off and disappear quietly. I was wrong. Because what happened next was something I never expected. I thought sending them the evidence would be enough. I thought they'd back off. Feel the weight of what they did. Maybe even apologize. I was wrong. So wrong. Because instead of shame, they came back with something worse. Threats. 3 days after I mailed the documents, I found a note taped to my front door. No signature. Just 7 words scrawled in shaky handwriting. You don't want to destroy everything, do you? I froze. My breath caught in my chest. I scanned the hallway. No one. Just silence and shadows. It was the kind of message that screams, stay quiet or else. I went back inside, locked the door, and sat in the dark for hours. Because here's the thing. When it's your own family threatening you, it hits different. It cuts deeper. Let me ask you something. What would you do if your parents threatened you to keep quiet? Would you stay silent? Or stand your ground? Tell me in the comments. I need to know I'm not crazy. The next day I got a call from my boss. We received an anonymous tip about you, she said carefully. Said you were using company resources to fund illegal activity. I laughed. At first. But she wasn't laughing. Because someone had sent her copies of my financial statements. Manipulated. Cropped. Twisted to look suspicious. They were trying to ruin me. Get me fired. Break me down piece by piece. And only 2 people had access to that kind of information. My parents. I called my lawyer again. Told him everything. He asked me one question. Are you ready to escalate this? First I wasn't. I didn't want the world to know what they did. Didn't want to wear the label, the daughter who took her parents to court. But now they were coming for my livelihood. My name. My future. So I said, yes. Let's do it. But just when I thought I was ready for battle, something else happened. A knock at my door. It was late, past midnight. And when I opened it, there she was. My mother. No makeup. No jewelry. Just tear-streaked cheeks and a folded piece of paper in her hand. I didn't know your father did all that, she whispered. I swear I didn't know, Evelyn. I stared at her, trying to find even a flicker of truth in her eyes. Then she handed me the paper. It was a letter. Signed. Dated. Written to the scholarship board. And it had her name on it. Her signature. She lied. He knew. I was scared, she said, voice shaking. Your father said we had no choice. We needed the money and Marcus was already in trouble. I cut her off. You stole from me. I know, she sobbed. And I wish I could take it back. But please, don't go public. We'll lose everything. The church. The business. Our name. Marcus could get investigated. I stood there in silence. Because in that moment something inside me shifted. She wasn't here because she was sorry. She was here because she was scared. Still protecting Marcus. Still making excuses. Still thinking I was the same quiet little girl they could control. But I wasn't. Not anymore. I'm not going to ruin you, I said calmly. But I'm not going to protect you either. I handed her a folder, full of everything my lawyer had prepared. A lawsuit. Witness statements. Bank records. Proof of financial fraud. And then I said, you've got 48 hours to come clean. Publicly. Or I go to the press. The board. The police. She cried harder. Begged me. But I closed the door. And this time I didn't look back. You know what's funny? All my life they told me I was the problem. Too emotional. Too independent. Too loud. But the truth is, I was the only honest one in the entire family. And now they were finally going to see what happened when the quiet one stopped being quiet. But just when I thought it was almost over, another secret surfaced. Something I never could have prepared for. Something that changed the way I saw everything. I thought I had uncovered everything. The stolen money. The lies. The manipulation. I was wrong. Because the deepest secrets, the ones that shatter everything you thought was true, they were still waiting for me. And I found one in the last place I expected. My father's old storage unit. It started with a phone call from a woman I didn't know. Is this Evelyn Porter? She asked, her voice soft. Yes, who's this? I work at Secure Space Storage on Briar Avenue. Your father hasn't paid his unit fee in months, and the account listed you as an emergency contact. My heart skipped. I almost told her to throw everything out. But something stopped me. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was that quiet voice in my gut that whispered, "You're not done yet." The next day I drove down to the facility. It was old, rusted, faded signs and forgotten boxes. And the moment I stepped inside the unit, I felt it. That same cold, sharp tension I'd felt all my life around my father. There were boxes. Dozens. Stacked sloppily. I opened the first one. Old tax records, receipts. Nothing shocking. But then, a sealed manila envelope with a post-it note on top. It read, "For Marcus, if anything happens to me." My stomach turned. I opened it. Inside were documents, birth certificates, adoption papers, and one phrase that made my blood run cold. Legal guardian transfer, Evelyn Porter. Wait, what? I flipped through the papers, heart pounding, vision blurring. And there it was. I wasn't their biological daughter. My hands shook. I had to sit down. According to these records, I had been adopted at age 5. From a woman named Lorraine Carter. The name meant nothing to me. But suddenly everything else did. The distance. The coldness. The way they treated Marcus like gold. And me like rust. I wasn't their daughter. I was their responsibility. I rushed home, heart still hammering. Looked up Lorraine Carter. She was dead. Passed away 10 years ago. But guess what? He had a sister. And she was alive. Her name was Elise. She lived 3 hours away. And yes, I drove straight to her doorstep. When she opened the door, her eyes widened. Then, filled with tears. "Evelyn," she whispered. She recognized me. Without hesitation. Without doubt. "I always wondered what happened to you." And in that moment, I cried. Because she didn't ask who I was. She didn't flinch. She just opened her arms. And for the first time in years, I felt something I had forgotten. Unconditional love. We sat down in her living room. She showed me photos. Told me stories. About my mother, Lorraine. A kind, bright woman who got caught in an abusive marriage. A woman who tried to protect me. Until she couldn't. "She made arrangements for you to go to a better home," Elise said, holding my hand. "But I didn't know this is where you ended up." She meant it with kindness. But I felt the sting behind her words. Because this is what they called a better home? A place where I was used. Beaten for saying no? They didn't adopt me to love me. They adopted me to save Marcus. Let me ask you something. If you found out your parents weren't really your parents, if you discovered your whole childhood was built on a lie, would you still fight to protect them? Or would you burn the whole story down? Comment your answer. I need to hear from people who understand this kind of pain. As now, everything made sense. Why they stole from me. Why they never truly connected with me. I was never a daughter. I was a tool. But here's the thing. They didn't just adopt me. They kept something else. Something I hadn't uncovered yet. I'm going to show you what they buried in my birth mother's will. Something that should have changed my life forever. If they hadn't hidden it. After I left Elise's house, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was angry. But because I was grieving a mother I never knew. And a version of myself I never got to become. But I also couldn't stop thinking about what Elise said. Lorraine tried to protect you. She had a plan. The plan? That night I dug deeper. Court records. Estate filings. Probate cases. And what I found. My biological mother had left me something. Something my adoptive parents never told me about. I called a local attorney who handled the Carter estate. He was retired but kind. "I remember Lorraine," he said, flipping through his records. "She was meticulous. She left a will, a trust. She wanted Evelyn to have a fresh start. A real shot." He paused. "Funny thing is, someone else filed for custody right after her death. Claimed Evelyn had no surviving relatives. I already knew who that someone was. My adoptive father. But what I didn't know, what shattered me all over again, was what they took next. Lorraine had left behind a property. A small lakeside cabin she inherited from her father. Nothing fancy, just land, peace, and a place to call home. And she left it to me. But that's not where it ended. She also left $75,000 in a locked trust. To be accessed by me, at age 21. If I was in good standing and enrolled in any educational program. I was 32 now. And no one had ever told me. As my parents never filed the will. They buried it. They claimed I had no surviving family, and skipped probate altogether. Which means, they stole that too. I broke. Not screamed. Not cried. Just broke. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about how many times they robbed me of my future. My truth. My name. All while pretending they saved me. The next morning, Elise met me at the old family lawyer's office. She signed a statement confirming her relationship to Lorraine. And to me. We filed a petition to reopen the estate. To reinstate the original will. And the lawyer said something I'll never forget. This is going to open everything they tried to keep closed. Good. Because it was time. A week later, I got a call from my adoptive father. No apology. No remorse. Just this. You think this makes you noble? You're tearing apart what's left of this family. I laughed. Tearing apart? You did that years ago. I'm just finally picking up the pieces. He hung up. That's when I knew. He wasn't scared of losing me. He was scared of losing control. You know, people always say blood is thicker than water. But that's not the whole saying. It's, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. And in that moment I realized, family isn't who raises you. It's who protects your spirit. Who lifts you without debt. Who tells you the truth even when it's hard. And that was never them. But here's where it gets wild. Just when I thought I was done uncovering lies. A new letter arrived. No return address. Just my name in handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a photo. Of a man. A note scribbled on the back. He knew Lorraine before she disappeared. You deserve to know the truth about what really happened to your mother. What? I stared at it, my hands shaking. Who sent this? Who was this man? And why did my mother disappear? I thought she died from illness. But now I wasn't so sure. Tell me, what would you do if someone hinted your real mother didn't just die, but was possibly taken from you? Would you chase that truth? Or walk away for peace? Let me know in the comments. The letter changed everything. One photo. One scribbled note. One unfamiliar face connected to the woman I barely remembered. I couldn't ignore it. Not after everything I'd uncovered. So I did what I always do when I need answers. I dug. I ran the photo through reverse image search. Nothing. Then I started calling people in Lorraine's hometown. People Elise had mentioned. One name kept coming up. Henry Walsh. He used to date Lorraine when they were young, someone told me. They lost touch after she married that man. But I heard he was around again near the end. Near the end? I found an address. A trailer out by Deerfield. I didn't know what I expected when I knocked on the door. But I didn't expect him. A quiet, weathered man in his late 60s. Tired eyes. Calloused hands. He looked at me like he already knew who I was. Evelyn, he said softly. I was wondering when you'd come. We sat at his tiny kitchen table. The air was heavy with silence. Then he said it. I was there. The night your mother disappeared. My heart stopped. What do you mean disappeared? She died. That's what I was told. He shook his head. No, she didn't. At least, not that night. She ran. He told me everything. Lorraine had been planning to escape her husband, my biological father. She was afraid. For herself. For me. She wanted to take you and vanish. Start over. But that night something went wrong. She showed up at Henry's place, bleeding. Panicked. She told me she tried to leave but he found out. Beat her. Took you. I couldn't breathe. She begged me to find you. Said if anything happened to her I had to protect you. But by morning, she was gone. Just gone. No police report. No funeral. Just silence. And then weeks later, my adoptive parents filed for custody. Your father showed up with paperwork, Henry said bitterly. Said Lorraine was dead. Claimed he was your next of kin. That it was all legal. I stared at him stunned. Why didn't you come forward? I tried. But no one listened. They had power. I was just some guy from the past. He looked away. I failed her. And I failed you. I left Henry's place in shock. Everything I thought I knew. Every layer of my past. It was all built on a crime. They didn't just steal from me financially. They erased my mother. Buried her truth. Rewrote her ending. And turned me into their pawn. I went straight to Elise. Told her everything. She wept. Held my hands like they were something sacred. Then she asked, "What are you going to do now?" And I told her the truth. I'm going to finish this. Because you don't get to rewrite someone's life just because you want power. You don't get to hurt someone for decades and walk away clean. And you don't get to erase a mother's love just to hide your own shame. But I need to know. If you were me, if you had the power to expose it all legally and publicly, would you do it? Even if it meant destroying your family's reputation forever? Even if it meant dragging your mother's memory through courtrooms and headlines? Comment your thoughts. They always thought I wouldn't fight back. That I'd stay quiet. That I'd swallow their lies like I swallowed my tears. But I was done surviving. Now I was reclaiming. The courtroom was silent. My hands trembled as I stood before the judge. Not out of fear, but from the sheer weight of everything I'd carried for years. The stolen condo. The forged adoption. The hidden will. No. The truth about my mother's disappearance. I submitted everything. The estate lawyer's testimony. Elise's affidavit. Henry's statement. The missing will. And then I looked directly at them. My parents, sitting stone-faced across the room. I didn't see remorse. I saw panic. Because for the first time I was in control. Afterward, my father tried to stop me outside. "You're ruining this family," he hissed. I turned to him slowly. "You ruined it the day you turned me into a secret. The day you took a grieving child and turned her into your insurance policy." He opened his mouth to argue, but I raised my hand. "I buried the version of myself that begged for your love. I'm not asking anymore." The court granted me full access to the property my mother left. The $75,000 trust. Recovered. Her cabin. Transferred to my name. And most importantly, her name was restored. No longer missing. No longer forgotten. Her death was ruled suspicious. And the case reopened. I took a trip to that cabin. Alone. It was small, dusty, untouched. But it was mine. Not because of the title, but because it was the one thing that hadn't been stolen. I sat on the porch looking out at the lake she once loved. And for the first time since I was 5 years old, I spoke out loud to her. "I found you, Mom. They tried to erase you. But I remember now. I remember everything. And maybe somewhere out there, he heard me. You know, people always think revenge is fire. Angry, loud, destructive. But sometimes it's quiet, cold, precise. Sometimes revenge is just taking back your name." Today I live in peace. Not just because justice was served, but because I finally know who I am. I'm not their daughter. I never was. I'm Lorraine Carter's child. Brave. But unbreakable. So let me ask you, if someone tried to erase your entire identity, would you stay silent? Or would you fight back, piece by piece, until the truth stood taller than the lies? Let me know in the comments, because someone out there needs to hear this. You are not what they did to you. You are what you choose to rise from.